Hey guys, so somebody asked about the massive burger recall, and I thought I would address this. This is actually different than the McDonald's quarter pounder recall, which was just announced the other day. But as I said at the beginning of the year, you're going to hear a lot more about recalls when it comes to animal products this year, and we've seen a lot of it. So Dakota Tom's Burgers, somebody had tagged me in a Facebook post about this. Dakota Tom's Burgers is part of the larger Bruce Pack meat recall. This meat recall was at 10 million pounds about a week ago, and it has continued to go up. So we're seeing more and more items being recalled from this particular recall. It's now up to about 11 million pounds of meat being recalled and growing. All this meat. So if you think about 11 million pounds of meat being recalled, all of this meat is being recalled because of a possible listeria outbreak. There hasn't been any reported illnesses. This is just a possibility, and people don't realize it, but recalls this size do impact the market. If you look at the boar's head meat recall, it definitely impacted what we were able to get as far as deli meat and things like that in the marketplace. So these recalls do have an impact on the prices that we're paying at the store. So the other thing I found interesting is that they're saying that almost 80 schools in the US have faced recalls on their chicken nuggets. And FSIS would like you to know that these schools were not part of the national schools breakfast and lunch programs, meaning that they have chosen to choose their vendors on their own. So if you want to be safe from recalls, trust the government. I do think it's important that we pay attention to recalls and that we understand that there are risks with just about any food product out there. But what ears me is the fact that the largest propaganda website when it comes to food recalls tends to use their platform for political purposes. It's no doubt that just a day after Donald Trump was serving burgers at McDonald's, they had a recall announcement on quarter pounders at McDonald's. And according to what I've read, there has actually been an outbreak. Somebody has actually been harmed by that. But I also find it interesting that during the Delaware vote to legalize raw milk sales, they published a blitz of articles on the dangers of eating raw milk. And if you look at their website today, they've been publishing articles about studies being done in England and Wales on the possible contamination of lamb meat, trying to make it sound as if lamb meat was more risky to eat. Right now, there is actually a vote going on in Denver in this election that would impact 25% of the U.S. lamb meat supply. It would impact a whole lot of ranchers as well. If you look at this slaughterhouse ban in Denver, the overall impacts, and this is something that we didn't talk about in our video. If you haven't heard about this, you should watch it, because this slaughterhouse ban would impact 25% of U.S. lamb production, 19% global lamb production. I'm not sure if the 19% number is actually correct, but that's a pretty big number either way you look at it, 25% of U.S. lamb production. If they're able to go in and ban an operating slaughterhouse from continuing to operate, I mean, basically they're taking away the equity from all of those workers who work in the slaughterhouse. They're destroying the entire facility of the slaughterhouse. They're also destroying the lender who has lent them money. And so when you think about the impacts of that, it's kind of like these areas where there's high risk of flooding and hurricanes and things like that. Insurance companies have been pushing rates through the roof because you live in a high risk area. You become uninsurable after a while. Well, if they're able to go in and shut down a slaughterhouse, just shut it down, right? And you can no longer operate it. It can no longer function. The lender is going to be put in a situation where they're going to lose equity as well. And from a lending standpoint, if that goes through, what is the risk to all the other slaughterhouse facilities across the country? What is the risk that some activist group is going to just come in and shut them down? Suddenly, you start making meat production a higher risk, which makes it more expensive to finance, or if in some cases it may make it impossible to finance. And that's what they want to see happen. What they want to see happen is they want to see a destruction of our meat supply here in the United States. These groups that's what they're after. You know, when you look at food prices today, they say that food prices have come down, but when you look at things like meat and when you look at things like dairy, when you look at things like vegetables and produce have gone up. A lot of that has to do with the fact that we've been changing the labor laws around agriculture, and that's been impacting farmers as far as how much they can produce, or, you know, even the cost of producing the food.
Consumers get sticker shock at the grocery store. Since 2018, oranges are up 219%, milk is up 39%, and tomatoes up 20%.
We all go to the grocery store and we feel the pain when we look at that receipt. We get out our credit card and tap it. So what are some of the trials and tribulations you're going through as a farmer?
Yeah, everything we've touched, all of our expenses have gone up. Fuel, fertilizer, our plant cost, and then especially our labor cost. We've seen a 22% increase in the past 2 years.
Labor is the Hall's #1 expense, consuming half of their budget, hundreds of thousands of dollars. The Halls use the H-2A migrant visa program.
On top of the federally mandated wage, more than $14 an hour in South Carolina,
The Halls are required to cover food, housing, and travel costs, more than $3,500 per worker. With 30 migrants on the farm, that's more than $100,000 in additional costs.
The only prices that have come down when it comes to food is cereals, sugar, and oils. Those food groups are extremely harmful for us, but they are also what we consider filler foods. In some places in this country, people who only have access to that are considered to live in what we call a food desert. So they don't have access to nutritional foods, but the actual nutritional foods are as high as they were during COVID or higher, and moving higher faster. So my biggest concern is when we have recalls based on a possible but not actual, nothing confirmed, nobody's actually been sick, you know, how is that impacting our food prices? And there have been an astronomical amount of these recalls over the past year. The other thing that concerns me is the amount of food we have lost in some of these hurricanes. When you look at some of these pictures of devastation and the things that have been happening throughout the Southeast because of the hurricanes, one has to wonder how much food supply has been lost because of these events. There's been a significant amount of food supply that's been lost. People have lost entire freezers and coolers full of fresh foods, produce, the things that are already priced very high. And then when you consider how much canned food has gone into these areas, it's definitely going to have an impact on our pocketbooks over the next couple of months. I also find it ironic that during this time when we're having these massive recalls, big storms that are disrupting, you know, how much food supply is out there, we've also had one of the largest poultry growers out in the Midwest file bankruptcy. And what happened was basically they stopped funding them. Without any funding, they couldn't get feed for their chickens. Now, a lot of those farmers have actually given chickens away for free to whoever could come in and get them because they couldn't feed them. And it was either that or, you know, over 1 million birds were just going to be simply euthanized.
We're all calling, you know, where's our checks? You know, we got mortgages to pay, and, you know, where's their checks?
Terry Fila and his wife Dawn watched the green in their wallets fly away.
But here we're left holding a bag with 60-some thousand birds in this barn.
As their grass turns white with feathers before their eyes.
Of that $100,000 they owe us, we should have $70,000 in the bank and on cruise control.
Minnesota-based Pure Prairie Poultry's processing plant in Charles City, Iowa closed suddenly. In a letter to the company, Wisconsin State Veterinarian Darlene Konko acknowledged the company's bankruptcy proceedings were dismissed, leaving it on the hook for the debt it owes. Pure Prairie Poultry has contracts with farmers in Wisconsin, Iowa, and Minnesota. It provides farmers with resources like chicken feed to make raising the birds possible. Now that there is no feed, the Filas are left with no choice but to give away all of their thousands of birds.
You technically can't sell a contracted bird.
For free. And they're not the only ones.
There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 8 growers, 9 growers.
Pure Prairie was in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Iowa. I believe the state of Iowa actually went in and took control over the birds that were in that state and are continuing to feed them and keep them into the food supply, which is a large number of the birds. But some of the farmers in Minnesota, at least I know, have been, they got on social media and just started giving away tens of thousands of birds because they couldn't feed them. So there are a lot of things that are going on right now, and I don't think people pay much attention to it. They look at the overall charts of food prices and stuff. They don't think about the fact that the only food that has gone down in price are cereals, oils, and sugars, things that aren't necessarily that great for you. So these aren't small things that we're talking about here. These are things that have great impacts. And my concern right now is that as we see a lot of these events unfold, in the meantime, what we're actually seeing is record high meat prices, record high produce prices, record high dairy prices. Basically anything that is healthy for you is going on record highs. And then you have this constant propaganda that it's unsafe.
Skyrocketing prices, wages, and operating costs have shuttered hundreds of thousands of American farms in the past 5 years. Over 140,000 American farms have tilled for the last time. Going back to 1950, 66% of all American farms, 3.75 million farms, have stopped producing.